"I want to buy a dad," said the little girl, pushing a worn $2 bill across the polished glass counter. Elliot Granger, the billionaire owner of Granger's Toys, froze mid-scan on the register. His hand, still resting on a boxed train set, slowly dropped to his side. For a moment, he wasn't standing in his flagship store, with the soft holiday music playing in the background and polished marble floors stretching beneath his feet. For a moment, he was simply a man staring at a child whose words had cracked something open inside him. She couldn't have been older than 6. Her name, as he would soon learn, was Maya Williams. At that moment, though, she was just a tiny thing with pigtails tied in fraying pink ribbons and oversized sneakers that looked like they belonged to someone else 2 years ago. She stood near the corner of aisle 5, half hidden between a rack of stuffed animals and a clearance bin, nervously watching the counter like she was working up the courage to cross a canyon. She didn't touch anything, didn't speak, just watched, silent and still, hands clutching something in her coat pocket. A teenage employee spotted her lingering. "Hey, kid," the girl snapped. "Don't just hang around. If you're not buying, you need to go." Maya flinched, took a timid step back. Her eyes darted from the towering clerk to the automatic doors at the front of the store. She looked like she might bolt. "Wait," Elliot said suddenly from behind the counter. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the air. The clerk turned, surprised. "Mr. Granger?" Elliot had seen it. The fear in the little girl's shoulders, the way she shrank from confrontation. He stepped out from behind the counter and crouched slightly, keeping his tone low and gentle. "It's all right," he said. "She's not bothering anyone." Then he turned to the girl. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Maya hesitated, then slowly approached the counter. Her hand reached into her coat and withdrew a worn $2 bill, some loose change, and a single subway token. "I want to buy a dad," she said, her voice quiet but firm. Elliot blinked. Around them, the store's normal cheer had gone still. The jingling music continued overhead, but the chatter from customers had quieted. A few adults nearby had stopped in their tracks. Even the teenage cashier stood frozen. "What did you say?" Elliot asked gently, kneeling to her level. "A dad," she repeated, more confidently this time. "My sister says you sell everything here, so I brought all my money." Elliot offered a hand, and she shook it with a small, determined grip. Her palm was warm and slightly sticky. "I'm Elliot," he said. "I own this store, and as much as I'd like to help you, we don't sell people here." Ezzo. Her face fell, not with tantrum or tears, but a slow, quiet disappointment that pierced deeper than any outburst. "Oh," she murmured, looking down at her hand. "I thought maybe, if I saved enough, I could have a dad for Christmas. Some kids at school get them. They go to the park and sit on shoulders. They don't always look so tired." Elliot felt something in his chest cave in. He remembered the night his father collapsed on the sidewalk, just outside the family's old construction site. Remembered being 7, staring at the hallway after the phone call came in, and asking his mom, "Can I use my allowance to bring Daddy back?" No amount of inheritance, no empire he'd built in the 20 years since, had made that memory less sharp. "Where's your mom, Maya?" "She went to heaven last year. Cancer," Maya replied, matter of fact. "And my sister works a lot. I stay with Miss Carla next door when Jenna's gone, but she's not my mom, and I don't have a dad." Elliot was about to ask something else when the door burst open, the familiar jingle of the holiday bell suddenly harsh against the silence. "Maya," a woman's voice rang out. Maya turned. "Jenna." A young woman in a faded red diner uniform rushed toward them. Her face, beautiful but drawn, was tight with panic. Her hair had slipped out of its bun and clung to her cheeks. She knelt beside Maya in one swift movement. "I'm sorry," Jenna breathed, hugging her sister. "I looked everywhere. Baby, you can't run off like that." "I was buying us a dad," Maya explained, gesturing at the counter. "But I don't have enough money." Jenna's eyes flicked up to Elliot, and in that split second, he saw her expression collapse from panic to embarrassment to fury to shame. She stood, placing herself protectively between Maya and him. "I'm sorry she bothered you," Jenna said stiffly. "She gets ideas sometimes." "She didn't bother me," Elliot said gently. "She reminded me why I started this place." Jenna blinked. "Right. May I walk you both to the door?" "We're fine," she said, gathering Maya's hand. As they turned to go, Elliot stood still, watching the two small figures head toward the exit. The little girl had tried to buy something the world told her she didn't deserve. And the woman raising her carried that burden alone, held together with coffee stains and overnight shifts. Just before they stepped outside, he called out, "Wait." Jenna stopped, just for a moment, and turned. "Your name," he said. "What was it?" "Jenna. Jenna Williams." He gave her a small nod, not expecting a smile in return, but she gave him one anyway. Just the faintest curve, worn and wary. Then they were gone. And Elliot Granger, billionaire, childless, and alone, stood behind the counter of his own empire, shaken by a girl with a dinosaur button and $2 to spare for a father. And for the first time in a decade, he didn't feel so sure that money could fix everything. That night, Elliot Granger sat alone in his penthouse office overlooking Fifth Avenue, the city lights flickering through the tall windows like restless thoughts. The leather chair beneath him groaned softly as he leaned forward, elbows on the mahogany desk, staring blankly at the open file in front of him, a product pitch for a digital toy line he couldn't bring himself to care about. The little girl's voice kept echoing in his mind. "I want to buy a dad." Elliot had heard a lot of things in his life: business pitches, investor threats, desperate employees begging for one more chance. But nothing stuck like that single sentence. Not since he was a boy himself, standing over his father's casket with a pocket full of marbles and the naive hope that if he dropped in enough, maybe God would trade. He sighed, rubbing his temple. The city moved without pause below. But up here, time felt slow, like something sacred had been interrupted. He tapped the intercom. "Call Marshall," he said. A moment later, his assistant's voice replied, "Yes, sir? Find out everything you can about a Jenna Williams. Late 20s, lives in the Bronx. She has a younger sister named Maya, about 6 or 7. Understood, sir." Elliot leaned back, feeling both uneasy and oddly determined. The next morning, Jenna Williams was late. Again, she darted out of the back entrance of Nestor's Diner, still tying her apron behind her. Her short shift there, the only one that didn't bleed into sunrise, was ending just as she was due to start another job uptown, cleaning offices. Between that and her evening hours at the laundromat and weekend babysitting gigs, she barely had time to breathe, let alone think. 4 jobs, 4 different uniforms, and none of them paid enough. She reached the subway platform just as the doors hissed shut. The train roared away, leaving her standing there, panting, eyes wet with exhaustion she didn't dare let fall. She reached into her coat pocket and found the little dinosaur pin Maya's. Her heart tightened. Maya had clipped it onto her sweater that morning and whispered, "It's for luck. You need it more than me." She wanted to laugh and cry all at once. The night before, Jenna had barely scolded Maya. The sight of her little sister standing in that enormous toy store, holding out 2 crumpled dollars with so much hope in her eyes, it had crushed her. How do you explain to a child that love doesn't come with a receipt? She'd looked at Mr. Grangertall, composed, clearly someone used to command, and for a second, she hated him. Not for his wealth, for the ease with which he'd spoken to Maya, like the world always bent a little for men like him. But then, something about the look in his eyes. He hadn't pitied them. He'd looked stunned, touched, human. Still, people like him didn't remember girls like her. But Elliot Granger wasn't the kind of man who forgot things that shook him. By midday, Marshall had returned with a file. Jenna Williams, age 27, high school graduate, no college, legal guardian of her younger sister, Maya Rose Williams. Their mother, Marie, passed from breast cancer 18 months ago. Father unknown on the birth certificate. Jenna works 4 jobs, lives in a rent-controlled apartment in the Bronx. No complaints, no criminal record, no assistance from child services. Her neighbors describe her as, and I quote, "stubborn as an ox but kind as the sky." Elliot studied the photos. One was Jenna at her apartment door, hair tied back, holding a laundry basket with Maya peeking from behind her legs. Another was of Jenna stepping onto a bus, eyes distant, half asleep. Her exhaustion was visible even in still frames. "She does it all herself," Marshall added quietly. "No backup, no help." Elliot nodded slowly. "And the father?" Marshall hesitated. "There's no trace. From what I gathered, Jenna never even met him. Their mother gave birth to Maya late in life. after her divorce. It's possible she used a donor, or just didn't want to say. Elliot tapped the file closed. Set up a meeting. With her? Number. With the store managers. I want to create something. A grant. Something under the radar. Marshall nodded. And the girl? She asked for a father, Marshall. Not a scholarship. I can't give her what she wants. But maybe I can give her sister the tools to keep being what she already is, a damn miracle. That evening, Jenna's fourth shift at the laundromat dragged into midnight. As she folded clothes under the humming buzz of broken fluorescent lights, the bell over the door jingled. She looked up. A tall man in a navy coat stood there, holding a large paper bag. I'm sorry, she said automatically, brushing hair from her forehead. We're closing up. I know, he said, stepping forward. But I thought you could use dinner. She froze. Mr. Granger? He offered the bag. Pulled pork sandwiches from Clark's and real sweet tea. Maya told me you skip meals. Jenna stared at him, lips parting. How did you? She reminds me of someone I used to be. A long silence stretched. She didn't move. I'm not here to pity you, he said. I don't want to save you. You don't need that. I just wanted to say, thank you, for keeping her hope alive. Jenna finally took the bag, her hands trembling. Why are you really here? Elliot hesitated, then said softly, because a little girl offered me $2 and reminded me what wealth really is. If you felt something too, give Jenna and Maya a like. And don't forget to share where you're watching this video from. You never know. Someone right near you might be watching it too. Jenna blinked hard, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. Rain tapped against the window pane in steady rhythm as Maya sat cross-legged on the old braided rug in their apartment. The tiny living room smelled faintly of fried onions from dinner and lavender from the sachets her sister tucked into drawers to keep the roaches at bay. Her new doll sat in her lap, the one Mr. Granger had given her 2 nights ago, wrapped in tissue and ribbon like something out of a dream. She hadn't let it go since. It wasn't just a doll. It was soft and brown like her, with braids like hers and a dress that looked like something from a storybook. Maya named her Hope. She whispered secrets into her ear at bedtime, and even offered her a bite of her grilled cheese at lunch. But today, as she fidgeted with the doll's back buttons, something clicked inside. Literally. Maya froze, ears perked. She turned the doll around again, fingers feeling along the seam behind its hairline. There was a tiny bump barely noticeable. With one tug, a flap opened. Inside was a tiny folded note and something else. A golden pin shaped like a compass rose. She held her breath and unfolded the note. It read, "For the brave one who sees what others overlook. This is not a toy. It's a key. Keep it safe. E.G." Maya stared at it, mouth ajar. Her heart pounded like it did when she played hide and seek and heard footsteps drawing near. She looked at the doll again. Was this a game? A secret treasure hunt? Or was it something else? She glanced toward the kitchen, where Jenna was busy sorting bills by the flickering stove light. Her sister looked tired, eyes rimmed red, her fingers rubbing her temples the way she did when the numbers didn't add up. Maya hesitated. She didn't want to add to the weight Jenna already carried, so she folded the note carefully, tucked it back inside the doll, and zipped her lips shut. For now, downtown, Elliot Granger sat in a boardroom where the air was thick with money and thin on patience. Executives from his advisory committee droned on about quarterly forecasts and the global toy market's shrinking demographics. He wasn't listening. His mind was still in the Bronx, picturing the girl with wide eyes and trembling hands, holding out her $2 like it was a treasure. And Jenna, standing in that laundromat with her chin high and her voice steady even when the world was anything but. Elliot? He looked up. What? Lawrence Chen, the CFO, frowned. We were asking if you'd reviewed the security protocols regarding Project Castor. There's been chatter on the dark web encrypted files with matching hashes. We need clearance to initiate a full internal sweep. Elliot's expression darkened. No, not yet. But if someone leaks. I said not yet. Elliot snapped, then softened. Give me 72 hours. If I don't have answers by then, you get your sweep. Heads nodded, but unease rippled through the room. Afterward, in the privacy of his office, Elliot opened a secure drawer and retrieved a flat black case. Inside lay an identical compass-shaped Pintha twin of the one hidden in Maya's doll. A relic. A marker. He pressed the pin gently, and a faint glow pulsed along its edge. Only a few people in the world knew what it meant. Fewer still had ever held one. And now, so did a 6-year-old girl. That weekend, Jenna noticed a change in Maya. She was quieter, more thoughtful. She played less and watched more. Her questions came in curious bursts. "Sis, what does it mean to be chosen? What if someone gives you a gift but doesn't tell you why? Can people be hiding something good, not just bad?" Jenna tried to answer as best she could, brushing off the worry in her chest. But one night, after Maya had fallen asleep with the doll clutched to her chest, Jenna picked it up to adjust the blanket and felt the bump. She hesitated. Then, gently, she found the flap and opened it. The note spilled into her hand. She read it once, twice, then turned pale. This was no toy, and this wasn't a coincidence. The next morning, Jenna waited outside the toy store before opening hours. She didn't care about appointments or social standing. She needed answers. To her surprise, Elliot Granger was already there, pacing near the display windows like a man trying to walk away from his own conscience. When he saw her, he straightened. "You found it," he said quietly. Jenna nodded, holding up the note. "What is this, Elliot? What are you doing?" He looked around and ushered her inside, locking the doors behind them. "I used to be part of something," he said. A quiet network of people who believed that real change didn't come from public campaigns or politics but from the shadows, from watching, helping, intervening in ways no system ever could. Jenna frowned. "You mean vigilantes?" "No, guardians. Quiet hands moving levers. We found talent where others saw nothing. We protected those no one noticed." Maya reminded me of someone we failed years ago. He opened his desk drawer and placed the second pin next to hers. "There are only 12 of these left, and Maya has one. Because I saw something in her I haven't seen in decades." Jenna's breath caught. She's a child. She's observant, brave, and maybe, just maybe, this is her calling. "I didn't ask for any of this." "No," Elliot said softly. "But maybe she did." They stood in silence. Then Jenna asked the question that had haunted her since she read the note. "Why now?" Elliot's face grew serious. "Because something's coming, and she may see what others will miss, just like her mother once did." Jenna's eyes widened. "You knew my mom?" Elliot looked away. "More than you think." Outside, the city moved on unaware. But inside that toy store, something had shifted forever. The following days felt heavier, like the air in their apartment had grown denser with something unspoken, something Jenna couldn't name but could feel every time she looked at Maya. Her little sister no longer asked about cartoons or the candy aisle at the corner store. Instead, she stared at people on the subway, silently studying their faces, watching, always watching. One morning, while waiting for the laundromat dryer to finish, Maya tugged on Jenna's sleeve. "Did Mom ever have a secret job?" she asked. Jenna looked down sharply. "What?" Mr. Granger said something about how she saw things others didn't. Jenna knelt, cupping Maya's face. "Sweetheart, Mom worked 2 shifts cleaning hotel rooms and still had time to kiss us goodnight. That was her job. But did she do anything else?" Maya insisted. "Like, help people in secret?" Jenna didn't answer right away, because truthfully, she didn't know. Their mother had always carried a quiet gravity, a certain way of listening without blinking, of seeing beyond the surface. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, Jenna had caught her at the window, murmuring names under her breath. Names Jenna never recognized. That night, after Maya was tucked in, Jenna pulled out an old shoebox from the closet. Their mother's keepsakes, pressed flowers, a broken pocket watch, a single worn photograph of her with a man Jenna had never met. And at the bottom, wrapped in a plastic bag, was a crumpled napkin with smudged ink. The name written across it made her blood turn cold. Elliot Granger. The next day, Jenna returned to the toy store. It was quiet, early. A light fog clung to the glass, and Elliot was already inside, polishing a wooden train with a cloth like it held the answers to life's questions. "I found something," Jenna said, walking in before he could unlock the door. He looked up. She laid the napkin on the counter. "She wrote your name. On this." "Why?" Elliot's face didn't change much, but his eyes told the truth. Sadness, guilt, Something like shame. She was my contact, he said quietly. Before she became a mother, she worked with us. In Memphis, then DC, and for a brief time, New York. Jenna's throat tightened. So it is true. She left the group after something went wrong. A mission in Raleigh. An informant was burned. She blamed herself. She wanted out. She never told us, Jenna said, barely above a whisper. She was protecting you. A silence settled between them. Then Jenna asked, "Why now? Why Maya?" Elliot folded his hands. "We're reactivating a search project, Castor. It's not a mission. It's a safeguard. Something from decades ago resurfaced. A database of names. Children. Adults. Quiet heroes. All flagged for surveillance by people who wanted them silenced. We thought it was gone. But it's not," Jenna guessed. "Number. Someone's selling pieces of it. And Maya found the first breadcrumb. By accident. Or maybe not." Jenna's voice broke. "She's 6. Elliot nodded. "And she's already more aware than most adults I know." That night, Jenna sat Maya down. "I want to tell you something," she said gently, "about Mom." Maya blinked slowly. "She was one of them, wasn't she?" Jenna paused. "She was strong, braver than we ever knew. She helped people, in secret, quietly." "Oh." Maya nodded solemnly, her small fingers clutched around the doll's waist. "Then maybe that's why I have it now. Maybe." Jenna reached over and brushed a strand of hair behind Maya's ear. "But no matter what happens, you tell me everything. Okay?" Maya nodded. "Even if it's weird?" "Especially if it's weird." Maya smiled for the first time in days. Then she said, "I think the man in the alley is watching us." Jenna's body stiffened. "What man?" "The one with the long coat. He doesn't blink. I saw him near the store, then near the school. He's like a shadow." Jenna stood abruptly and went to the window. The street below looked normal: cars, a dog walker, a woman pushing a stroller. But she knew better than to doubt Maya now. Elliot had said something was coming, and maybe it already had. The next morning, Jenna walked Maya to school herself, scanning every face, every parked van, every open window. Nothing felt right. At the school gate, Maya hesitated before going in. "Will you tell Mr. Granger?" she asked. "About the man? Number about the doll, and the key, and what I read last night." Jenna froze. "What did you read?" Maya dug into her backpack and handed Jenna a folded piece of paper. Not the same note as before. This one looked older, stained. "I found it under the doll's stuffing. It was hidden deep. I almost didn't see it." Jenna opened the paper. In faded handwriting it read, "If you're reading this, the list has been activated. Look for the initials CD and the phrase Blue Harvest. Trust no one in uniform. And don't forget the name, Raynard Walters." Jenna felt the ground shift beneath her. "Where did you say you found this?" Maya whispered. "Inside Hope's chest. Tucked in the corner." That evening, Jenna didn't go home. She took the train to the Lower East Side, found an old contact her mother once spoke about, a man named Theo who ran a bookstore without a sign. He let her in after hours. When she showed him the note, his hand shook. "Raynard Walters," he said, voice dry. "He's not just a name, he's a ghost. And if his name's back in circulation, someone's about to get hurt." "Who is he?" Jenna demanded. Theo looked at her with old, tired eyes. "The man your mother couldn't save." And just like that, Jenna realized. Whatever her mother had walked away from was no longer in the past. It was in their living room, inside her little sister's doll, and it had already started again. It was almost midnight when Jenna returned home, her mind a battlefield of names, fragments, and questions. She kept replaying Theo's voice in her head. "The man your mother couldn't save. Raynard Walters. Blue Harvest. CD." The phrases felt like broken shards of glass pressing against something buried deep inside her memories. Something she didn't know she remembered. Until now. She found Maya curled on the sofa, still wearing her clothes from school, the doll clutched tightly in her arms. Her chest rose and fell slowly, peacefully, unaware of the storm gathering around them. Jenna watched her for a long minute, then leaned down and gently picked up the doll. She turned it over, fingers trembling, and unfastened the seam along its back, revealing the hollow again. Aside from the note, There was something else tucked behind the stitching. A photograph, black and white, grainy. A man in uniform, wide shoulders, thick mustache, standing in front of an aircraft hangar. Reynard? On the back of the photo, someone had written in blue ink, "CD is watching. Trust only the lights that blink once." Jenna whispered the line under her breath. Trust only the lights that blink once. She didn't sleep that night. By morning, Jenna had mapped everything on the back of a grocery receipt: Elliot's info, Theo's warnings, the note, the picture. Her mother had left them a trail, buried in the doll like a time capsule. Now she had no choice but to follow it. That afternoon, Jenna went back to Elliot's store. He was standing by the window, watching something across the street. "Did you know about Reynard?" she asked as she stepped inside. Elliot didn't answer at first. Then he nodded. "He was our guardian, our field compass. If he's back in play, something's gone very wrong." "What does Blue Harvest mean?" Jenna demanded. Elliot turned to her, eyes dark. "It was a code, a fallback. In case our network was compromised. Blue meant data, harvest meant names. If you saw the phrase, it meant someone was collecting again, rebuilding the surveillance web. And CD? Codename for a handler we were never allowed to meet. Cold Day. No one knew their real face. Only that when they appeared, people vanished." Jenna felt the weight of it all crashing over her. "You need to tell me exactly what my mother was involved in." Elliot hesitated, then motioned her to the back of the store, where an old wood-paneled office sat locked behind a door she'd never noticed. He opened it slowly, revealing a wall covered in photos, strings, and maps, like something from a conspiracy thriller. Only this wasn't fiction. She was a mapper, Elliot said. She traced patterns no one else could see, found links between people who thought they were invisible, traffickers, corrupt officials, hit squads. She wasn't just cleaning rooms, she was collecting voices. Jenna stared at the wall, recognizing her mother in 3 separate photos. One with a man she now believed to be Reynard, another in front of a post office, and the last, a blurry image of her standing at the edge of a protest, her face half covered, holding Maya as a baby. "She never told me any of this," Jenna whispered. "She couldn't," Elliot said. "You were her cover, her hope." Jenna turned to him, fire rising in her voice. "So why is Maya mixed up in this now?" "Because someone thinks she has access to what your mother buried, and that someone is watching." Jenna pulled out the photo Maya had found. "Do these blinking lights mean anything to you?" Elliot took the photo, eyes narrowing. "There's a safe house in Queens. The front porch has a motion light, blinks once for friendlies, twice for threats. It's old school, but if the message is legit, that may be where the rest of this trail leads." That evening, as Jenna packed Maya's things into a small overnight bag, the little girl asked softly, "Are we going on a trip?" "Yes," Jenna said, "just for a night or 2. Will it be safe?" Jenna hesitated. "I'll keep you safe." Maya stared at her with those same perceptive eyes that had unnerved even Elliot. "Did Mom do dangerous things too?" Jenna nodded slowly, but always for the right reasons. Maya took her doll and whispered, "Then I want to do the right things too." They took a cab to Queens, driving through a dusk that felt too quiet. Every pedestrian felt suspicious, every parked van a warning. When they arrived at the address Elliot had given them, the house looked abandoned, peeling paint, weeds crawling over the porch, a mailbox overflowing with flyers. But when Jenna stepped onto the porch, the motion light flickered once, then died. She turned to Maya. "That's our signal." They entered quietly, Jenna's hand gripping a small canister of pepper spray she'd hidden in her jacket. Inside, the air smelled of dust and forgotten stories. The hallway was lined with framed photos, all of different children, all black, all smiling, a forgotten gallery. In the back room, a figure stood in the shadows. Jenna froze. "Who are you?" The figure stepped forward slowly, hands raised. "My name is Lyle. I was your mother's second contact. She told me to wait, for a sign." "What sign?" Jenna asked. He pointed at Maya. "That face, and that doll. She said one day they'd come back together." Jenna's voice cracked. "Do you know what she hid?" Lyle nodded and reached into a drawer, pulling out a metal case the size of a book. He handed it to Maya. She said only the girl would open it. Maya looked at the lock, then reached into her doll's pouch and pulled out the key. The case clicked open, Inside was a drive, a single USB, labeled in red, Project Redemption. Lyle stepped back. That drive has the names of every official who signed off on surveillance orders against children like you. Why? Jenna asked, breathless. Because silence kills faster than bullets, Lyle said. Your mother believed someone would have the courage to speak. And now, maybe that someone is Maya. Jenna knelt beside her sister, feeling the weight of it all. The danger, the legacy, the choice. And Maya? She simply held the drive in both hands, looked up at her sister, and said, I think this is what I was supposed to find. Jenna nodded, and together, they stepped out of the house, into the fog, into whatever came next. The next morning dawned gray and heavy, a slow drizzle trailing down the window panes of the modest motel room where Jenna and Maya had taken refuge for the night. Maya sat cross-legged on the bed, still in her pajama shirt, absently turning the USB drive over in her small hands. She didn't speak much. Her usual childlike curiosity was subdued, weighed down by the silent knowledge that what she held was no ordinary piece of plastic and metal. Jenna had barely slept. Her body was still, but her mind had been running all night, replaying every word from Lyle, every image on that wall in Elliot's back room, and every soft murmur from Maya in her sleep. The world had flipped, twisted. The woman who raised her had done so while watching her own back. And now Jenna was carrying the weight of a war she never volunteered for. Her burner phone buzzed. She snatched it off the nightstand, heart jumping. Caller ID, blocked. She answered, voice steady. Hello? A man's voice, low and calm. You've opened the case. Jenna's throat tightened. Who is this? I'm the one your mother was meant to meet before she disappeared. But she never made it. They got to her first. Jenna's breath hitched. Your CD? A short pause. That name was given to me. I don't use it anymore. What do you want? I want to make sure her work wasn't in vain. I want to help you and the girl stay alive long enough to release what's on that drive. Jenna's eyes flicked toward Maya, still playing quietly. Why should I trust you? Because your mother did. And because if you don't move in the next 6 hours, your location will no longer be a secret. Jenna's spine stiffened. You're saying someone's coming? Not someone. Many. And they won't knock. Jenna whispered. Where do we go? There's a man named Marcus Trammell, retired Marine. Runs a community center in Newark. Ask for the basement. I'll be waiting. The line went dead. Jenna stared at the phone, then at Maya. Pack your things, she said gently. We have to go. The ride to Newark was a blur of traffic, tension, and fast food wrappers. Maya quietly watched out the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Jenna's hand remained clenched around the USB drive in her coat pocket the entire way. They arrived at the community center around noon. It was a red brick building nestled between two empty lots. A group of teenagers played basketball on the cracked court out front. An old man swept the sidewalk while humming an old Otis Redding tune. Inside, the center smelled like hardwood floors, sweat, and cafeteria lunches in odd comfort that reminded Jenna of middle school field trips. At the front desk, a young woman with braids and a clipboard looked up. Jenna leaned in and said, We're here to see Marcus Trammell. He's expecting us. The woman didn't react, just nodded and motioned toward the hallway. Basement door, down the left stairs. They followed the dim hallway until they reached a steel door marked maintenance. Jenna knocked twice. It creaked open. Marcus was built like a fridge with eye stall, broad-shouldered, mid-50s, with salt and pepper stubble and a limp in his right leg. He wore a plain black hoodie and jeans, but his eyes were all soldier. You Jenna? He asked. She nodded. And that's the girl? Maya. He stepped aside. Come in. The basement was surprisingly warm, lined with old bookshelves, 2 folding tables, and a battered couch. But at the center stood a small terminal wired to a secure satellite link. I've kept this rig off-grid for 7 years, Marcus said. But for this, I'll risk it. Jenna handed him the drive. Before you open it, what exactly are we going to find? He glanced at Maya. The past and the future. He plugged it in. Lines of code blinked across the screen, followed by folders labeled with date stamps and cryptic tags. Sunflower 13, Dust Post South, Indigo Cell, and finally, Echo Kid. Marcus clicked the last one. Up popped thousands of surveillance logs, audio recordings, intercepted messages, photographs, most centered around families, particularly black families, being tracked under the guise of educational support programs or behavioral health assessments. It was systematic, institutional, and invisible to the public. Marcus's jaw tightened. My God, this isn't surveillance. This is social engineering. Jenna stepped closer. You're saying they weren't just watching. They were shaping outcomes? Failing certain kids on purpose, redirecting funding, even tipping off police about so-called problem households that didn't really exist. Maya whispered. So, they were hurting people like us? Jenna knelt beside her. Yes, baby. But now we're going to stop them. Marcus looked at both of them. You realize if you release this, it'll destroy more than reputations. There will be lawsuits, investigations, maybe even trials. Jenna said quietly. That's what my mother died for. Marcus nodded, eyes gleaming. Then we start tonight. Later that evening, after a quick meal and a few rounds of password encryption, Marcus opened a secure comm line to an old contact in D.C., a journalist named Camille Booker, who once blew the whistle on voter suppression in Alabama. They sent her a sample of the logs, enough to catch her attention. Where did you get this? She demanded over the speaker. My sister, Jenna said, and a woman who gave her life for the truth. Camille paused. I'll need 72 hours, then it goes live. Jenna closed her eyes. That's all we need. Maya tugged at her sleeve. Can I do something too? Jenna smiled. You already have, sweetheart. But that night, as Maya drifted to sleep on the basement couch and Jenna sat beside her, a shadow moved across the security camera in the alley. Marcus frowned and reached for his sidearm. They're early, he said grimly. Jenna stood, heart racing. The game had begun, and they were no longer just survivors. They were the storm. The first sound was faint, just a soft metallic click from the alley camera feed. Marcus's eyes narrowed. He turned up the volume. Another faint scrape. Boots. Careful. Coordinated. Not street thugs. Not kids. Jenna rose from the floor, where she'd been tucking Maya under a fleece blanket. Her body tensed as she scanned Marcus's face. How many? He replied without looking at her. Too many for comfort. 4, maybe 5. Could be more out of frame. Tactical, not random. Jenna's breath caught. Then they found us. Maya sat up suddenly, rubbing her eyes. Is it morning? Jenna knelt and brushed hair from her forehead. Not yet, baby. But I need you to stay very quiet, okay? Maya nodded, her voice barely a whisper. Okay. Marcus moved quickly, locking the basement door and flipping a switch behind a shelf. The back wall gave a slight click, revealing a narrow, hidden corridor leading deeper into the foundation. Old bootlegger tunnel. Runs beneath the alley into a neighboring building. You two go. I'll hold them. No, Jenna snapped. You're not staying here alone. Marcus's eyes didn't waver. It's not up for debate. You have the drive. You're the legacy. I'm just a man buying you time. Before she could argue further, a sudden, deep thud shook the ceiling. A battering ram. The main door upstairs. Maya let out a soft whimper. Jenna turned to her and whispered, Go with Marcus. Now. I'll be right behind you. Marcus handed Jenna a shortwave radio. Channel 3. I'll signal when it's clear or if you need to run. Jenna nodded. Stay alive. You too. She scooped Maya into her arms, pressing the USB drive tight against her chest. They ducked into the passage as Marcus sealed the panel behind them. From the other side of the wall came the sound of the upper door crashing open, followed by boots stomping down wooden stairs, orders barked in clipped code, and the unmistakable crackle of military-grade comms. Jenna moved faster, feeling the cold concrete under her feet, her shoulder brushing against pipes and insulation. The tunnel smelled of mildew and metal like time itself had been locked away. Maya clung to her silently. No tears now, just trust. At the end of the tunnel was another locked panel. Jenna pressed a lever, and it creaked open into a dusty maintenance room beneath a shuttered auto parts store. She pulled Maya through and shut it gently behind them, flipping the latch. Static buzzed in the shortwave. Then Marcus's voice, tight and breathless. 2 inside. Confirmed breach. Holding them at stairwell. Exit northeast. Don't double back. Jenna swallowed. Copy that. She looked at Maya. We have to go. No noise, okay? They crept through the store's side door and emerged into the early morning chill. Mist still hung over the asphalt. Everything was damp. They ran through back alleys, ducking dumpsters and fire escapes, the city both silent and complicit. Finally, they reached a small bus terminal. Jenna used the emergency funds from her coat small bills her mother had once packed into an envelope labeled Rainy Day, Real Rain. She bought 2 tickets to Trenton under false names. As they sat in the back row of the bus, Maya leaned her head on Jenna's arm. Is Mr. Marcus okay? Jenna looked out the window. He's brave. Like you. Am I brave? Jenna kissed the top of her head. You're the bravest person I know. The bus pulled out. Jenna kept one hand inside her coat, wrapped around the USB like a relic. They had escaped. For now. Across the river, back at the community center, the last of the masked intruders swept the basement. But there was no Jenna, no Maya, no USB. Only Marcus, seated in a steel chair, wrists zip-tied, blood trickling from a gash on his temple. He smiled through broken lips as one of the agents barked into a radio. They're gone. The target has slipped. The man in charge, a sharp-suited operative with a cold gaze, stepped forward. You stalled them. Why? Marcus's smile widened, despite the pain. Because you're the rot, and now the world will smell it. The agent's jaw tightened. Take him. 2 hours later, Jenna and Maya were sitting in a motel room outside Trenton. Cheap, quiet, cash only. Jenna paced, radio in hand. She flipped to channel 3. Static. Then, Marcus's voice hoarse, barely audible. Didn't break. They're moving east. You have 48 hours. Then silence. Jenna set the radio down slowly. Her fingers trembled, but not from fear, from certainty. They weren't running anymore. They were heading straight into the fire. She opened her backpack and took out a notebook. Inside were scribbled addresses, names from the files, and one last lead. Camille Booker had sent a message during the ride. She decrypted one of the folders. What she found wasn't just surveillance. It was manipulation of legislation, bribery, a sealed memo detailing a planned policy rollout called Echo Kid Phase 2. More cities, more children. Jenna closed the notebook. Maya was drawing on the motel notepad, stick figures holding hands under a sun with thick crayon rays. She pointed at one. That's you. And who's that next to me? You, Maya said, with armor on. Jenna smiled faintly. Yeah? What kind of armor? Truth armor. Jenna laughed, tired, honest. That's the best kind. But as the sun broke through the clouds outside, shining light through the stained motel curtains, her face grew serious again. Because the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The diner sat off a cracked state highway, forgotten by time and saved only by truckers who still preferred bacon grease over prepackaged gas station fare. Jenna and Maya sat in the back booth, vinyl seats cracked with age, the air thick with the smell of coffee and fried potatoes. A lone jukebox in the corner buzzed but didn't sing. Maya played with the salt shaker, stacking napkins like building blocks. Her crayon drawing sat in front of her, folded carefully beside the last biscuit she was saving. For Mr. Marcus. Jenna stirred her coffee absently. She hadn't slept. Not really. Her eyes darted to the glass door every time it opened, half expecting men in dark suits or unmarked cars. But all that came through were truckers in flannel and old women with tired smiles. Across from them, Camille Booker arrived. She looked different in person, more tired, more human. The thick glasses didn't hide the weight she carried behind her eyes. She slid into the booth and gave Maya a gentle nod. Hi, sweetheart. I'm Camille. I've heard you're quite the brave one. Maya smiled shyly and went back to drawing. Jenna reached into her coat and pulled out the USB. Camille took it with trembling hands and slipped it into a small, secure laptop. Your email said you decrypted one of the folders, Jenna said. How bad is it? Camille's jaw tensed. It's systemic. Coordinated. Echo Kid isn't just about neglect, it's about control. They're building predictive behavior models on kids, using school-issued tablets to track what they read, what they click, how they react to certain content, then labeling them subtly, nudging them into academic or disciplinary paths. Jenna leaned forward. You're saying they're coding kids before they even know who they are? They call it guided futures. It's packaged as a support system, but it's steering Black and Hispanic kids away from high-opportunity tracks. It's dressed in equity language, but the underlying algorithms flag them as behavioral risks based on zip codes, family structure, speech patterns. Jenna's fingers clenched around her mug. How do you prove that without sounding like a conspiracy theorist? You don't. You show the code, the emails, the backroom memos. I've got enough here to make noise, but not enough to survive a smear campaign. We need testimony. People inside. Whistleblowers. Jenna's breath caught. I have someone. Her name's Latrice Nolan. She worked in the pilot program. She's scared, but she's talking. Camille nodded. Then we need to meet her. Tonight. From the end of the booth, Maya suddenly asked, will it stop them from hurting more kids? Both women fell silent. Jenna finally replied, it's a start. That evening, they met Latrice Nolan in a quiet library room in Newark. She looked over her shoulder constantly, eyes sunken, hands fidgeting with the strap of her purse. I didn't sign up for this, she said, voice low. They told me it was a mentorship program. I believed in it, until I saw the files they didn't want public. Camille recorded her with a handheld mic, careful to keep it low profile. Tell me about the behavioral risk index. They make it sound scientific, Latrice said. But it's racism in code. They said Maya was high risk because she drew monsters with red eyes, because she preferred silence. That child isn't broken, she's just grieving. Jenna sat beside her, still, her face pale. They flagged my sister? Latrice nodded slowly. She was on the observation tier, quiet flag, meant to follow her progress, keep tabs, redirect if needed. Most parents never find out until it's too late. Ah, Camille asked. Can you get us the internal rubric? The criteria files? I have a flash drive, Latrice said. I've been carrying it in my bra for weeks. Paranoid, I guess. No, Jenna said. Just smart. Latrice handed the small black drive to Camille. That's everything I could gather without triggering their system. But you need to move fast. They're coming down hard on leakers. Camille looked at the two women. We go public in 72 hours. I've got media contacts. But once this breaks, it's war. They'll come after anyone connected. Jenna looked at Maya, curled up on a beanbag in the corner of the room with a children's book she couldn't read, her eyes scanning the pages like she was searching for something familiar. I'm not running anymore, Jenna said. We finished this. Back at the motel, after midnight, Jenna lay awake on the scratchy bedspread, watching the moonlight filter through torn blinds. Maya slept beside her, soft breaths steady, one hand still wrapped around the corner of her drawing. Camille was working on her laptop, fingers flying. The files Latrice had handed over weren't just internal memos, they contained correspondence between city officials, corporate donors, even political strategists. The money behind Echo Kid came from an education initiative called Future Now PAC, tied to national candidates. This isn't just a school system, Camille said softly. This is a blueprint for the next 20 years. Jenna sat up. So if we stop it here, we slow it everywhere, Camille finished. There was a long silence. Then Jenna asked, do you believe in justice? Camille didn't look up. I used to believe in exposure. Now I believe in consequences. Jenna nodded. Then let's deliver both. She pulled Maya's drawing from her coat pocket and laid it flat on the bedspread. It was the one she'd folded so carefully, the one with her in truth armor. For a moment, all the fear fell away, replaced by purpose. Tomorrow, they would begin the real fight. Not from shadows, but in daylight, with names, with proof, and with a little girl who had already seen too much and still believed in heroes. That was their edge. The truth wasn't just Data, it was Maya. The system tried to erase her, but she stood, quiet, brave, with her $2 dreams and her monster crayons, and they'd underestimated her. Tomorrow, the world would know her name. The morning air in Camden was thick with a hushone of those rare silences that falls before something changes. Jenna, Camille, and Latrice sat in the cramped back room of a local AM radio station, the kind that still played gospel at dawn and fielded community calls about potholes and prayer circles. The station manager, a man in his 60s named Rufus Tate, had once marched with the sanitation workers in Memphis. His loyalty to truth was inked into the creases on his hands and the sermon-like way he spoke. Camille paced by the window as Rufus did a final check of the mic levels. "You understand the risk?" he asked without looking up. "We do," Camille answered. "I mean it," he said, turning to face them. "They'll come for your jobs, your families, maybe more. But if what y'all brought me is true, this ain't just a local scandal. It's a reckoning." Jenna glanced at Maya, who sat quietly in the corner of the room, holding a folded sheet of paper in her hand, the drawing again. This time, Maya had added 3 figures standing behind the little girl in armor: a tall woman with glasses, a tired-looking sister, and a lady with curly hair holding a microphone like a sword. Jenna took a deep breath. "Let's go live." At exactly 8:03 a.m., the airwaves crackled with Rufus Tate's familiar voice. "Good morning, Camden. This is Rufus Tate, and today's not your regular broadcast. Today we pull back the curtain." He introduced the guests only by first name. Camille spoke first, her voice calm, deliberate, backed by evidence. She explained the program, how Echo Kid operated under the guise of academic support while secretly profiling vulnerable children, especially black and brown kids, with predictive algorithms. Then Latrice shared her story, how she was misled, then threatened, how she'd watched good teachers be removed when they asked questions, how Maya, a grieving child, had been labeled a risk, not because she misbehaved but because she was quiet, because she didn't smile enough. Callers began flooding the line. A retired teacher in Trenton, a mother in Philadelphia who'd wondered why her son suddenly lost access to college prep, a pastor whose after-school program was defunded after a visit from unnamed district partners. The grief and rage poured in, one story after another, forming a mosaic of injustice that could no longer be denied. Then came the moment no one expected. "Would you like to speak, Maya?" Rufus asked gently, lowering the mic toward her. Maya looked at Jenna, unsure. Jenna knelt beside her. "You don't have to, but if you want to, they'll hear you." Maya nodded slowly. She climbed into the chair, the microphone almost too big for her small frame. "My name is Maya Williams," she said softly. "I miss my mom, and I don't know why people think I'm bad because I don't talk much, but I see things, and I draw what I feel, and I want to be someone who helps people. That's all." Dead silence on the line. Then the station's phone rang again. This time it wasn't a caller, it was a representative from a local news outlet asking for an interview. Another call came in, an attorney from Newark offering legal protection for Latrice and the others. Then another, an anonymous whistleblower from within the school board who said, "Check folder 11B, there's more." Camille's eyes widened. "We just lit the fuse." Hours later, social media exploded. The story was clipped, subtitled, and shared by major education justice groups. The hashtag number #EchoKidExposed trended nationally by mid-afternoon. Rufus's old station, usually overlooked, was now the epicenter of a media storm. By sunset, Camille's inbox was full. A junior developer from the program's software team sent code files proving how racial and economic data were used to steer student opportunities. An editor from a major newspaper wanted to run a front-page exposé. But amidst the chaos, Jenna stayed focused. She took Maya for ice cream at the corner shop. For the first time in a long while, they sat by the window and laughed, not because things were okay, but because they'd stopped hiding. "I heard what you said on the radio," Jenna said, licking her cone. Maya looked up. "Did I do okay?" "You did better than okay, kiddo," Jenna smiled. "You showed people the truth." They walked home as the streetlights flickered on. Cars passed slowly. Strangers nodded at them. Something unspoken had shifted. People saw them now not just as another struggling family, but as part of something bigger. As they neared the motel, Camille caught up with them, her phone in hand. "We need to talk," she said. "What is it?" Jenna asked. Camille turned the screen toward them. On it was a news alert from a national network. "Breaking. Major education company issues statement denying allegations, but internal review launched." "They're scared," Camille said. Jenna glanced at Maya, who looked back with quiet fire in her eyes. "Good," Jenna replied. "Let them be." In the distance, thunder rolled low and slow. A summer storm was coming. But for once, Jenna felt ready for it. She reached down and took Maya's hand, squeezing gently. "We're not just surviving anymore. We're changing the story." And for the first time in her life, she believed it. The rain came heavy that night, drumming against the windows of the motel like a steady knock at the door. Jenna sat at the edge of the bed, her arms around Maya, watching the thunderclouds roll across the television screen. On the floor, Camille had spread open a folder marked 11B, the one the anonymous caller had mentioned. The contents were nothing short of damning. There were memos, flagged reports, and handwritten annotations by district executives. But most troubling were the predictive model results. Spreadsheets full of names children, ages 6 to 12 are ranked by projected deviation. And next to many names, a code, DNR. Do not recommend, Camille whispered, voice shaking. They were using this to cut kids out of opportunities. Not just scholarships, not just gifted programs. This is systemic isolation. Latrice leaned over, reading silently. And it gets worse. Look, these field agent notes. They've been watching families, recording things. One note says, parent works multiple jobs, child likely unsupervised during weak potential liability. Jenna's jaw tightened. They're treating these kids like future problems to eliminate. And they're hiding it behind buzzwords like early intervention and community safety, Camille added. Suddenly, Maya got up and walked toward the window, the folder still in her hands. There's something else. What is it, baby? Jenna asked. I've seen that man before, Maya said, pointing to a photo clipped to one of the reports. It was a blurry shot of a well-dressed black man in a charcoal suit, shaking hands with the superintendent. That's Martin Kellogg, Camila said. He's the tech consultant who helped implement Echo Kid. He's always presented himself as a reformer. Maya's brow furrowed. He came to my school once. I saw him talk to the principal. And he looked at me like he knew something. Like I was already a number in his head. Jenna stepped closer to Camille. Where is he now? He's based in D.C. runs a think tank. But word is, he's planning to announce a new education initiative, probably to rebrand the same damn thing. Latrice crossed her arms. We can't let him get away with it. The next morning, they drove toward Trenton in silence. Rufus had connected them with a civil rights attorney named Lionel Hart, an aging but razor-sharp litigator known for bringing down corrupt housing officials in Newark during the 90s. He agreed to meet in person at a diner he'd owned for 30 years, a place called Juneberry's, where the biscuits were still made by hand and coffee never stopped pouring. Lionel looked at the documents, his eyes narrowing behind thick glasses. You realize this is bigger than a lawsuit. This is institutional targeting of children under the guise of protection. If we go public, there will be blowback. They'll try to flip the narrative, say it's about parental failure or teacher bias. Jenna didn't blink. Then we don't let them speak first. Lionel nodded. We'll file an injunction to freeze all related programs within the state. But that's not enough. We need a face, a story, one that can't be turned into numbers. Camille looked at Maya. She's already done that. Lionel smiled gently. Then we do this on our terms. He placed a worn business card on the table. This man owes me a favor. He's a producer at a public affairs show that airs Sunday morning's national viewership. If we're careful, we can make the whole country see. Later that night, they gathered in Lionel's office, preparing for the televised interview. The production team would arrive in the morning. Camille reviewed talking points. Latrice sifted through timelines, and Jenna helped Maya choose a dress-a simple navy one with white buttons and a soft collar. As Maya sat still, Jenna gently brushed her curls. You're going to be on television, baby. You okay? Maya nodded. Can I show them my drawing? Jenna paused. You want to bring it? I want people to see what I see. Jenna smiled, tears rising but not falling. Then you show them, sweetheart. Meanwhile, Camille stood alone in the hallway with Lionel. She's just a kid, she said. She shouldn't have to carry this. She's not carrying it alone, Lionel replied. And truth is, it's the children who always pay the price when the adults fail. Camille nodded, then whispered. There's something I haven't told them. That folder, it mentions a new trial site for the updated algorithm. It's scheduled to begin in 2 weeks. In a town just like this. Lionel's expression hardened. Then we stop it before it starts. By dawn, the production crew arrived. They set up inside the diner, Juneberry's gleaming like a cathedral of resistance beneath the hanging lamps and framed photos of local heroes. Maya sat across from the interviewer, legs dangling above the floor. He leaned in, voice soft. "Can you tell me what you feel when you draw?" Maya held up her sketch. The little girl in armor stood tall again, but now behind her were more people: her sister, Camille, Jenna, Latrice, Rufus, and even Lionel. Their faces looked tired but brave. "I draw because sometimes words don't work," Maya said. "But pictures, they can make people feel, and I want them to feel what we went through." The host turned to the camera, visibly moved. There are moments when a nation must decide what kind of future it wants to build. Today, a little girl reminds us of what's worth fighting for. In that moment, across breakfast tables and silent living rooms, across school cafeterias and courtrooms, Maya's voice echoed, and the fight for justice began to feel like it had a real chance. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. The morning after Maya's televised interview, Jenna's phone started ringing before sunrise. Journalists, whistleblowers, and even a few hesitant school staffers called in, confirming what the documents had hinted at: this wasn't a local anomaly. It was a coordinated, nationwide pilot hiding behind bureaucratic language and digital opacity. Camille paced in front of the motel's old window unit, phone to her ear, speaking with someone from a parents' coalition in Alabama. "Yes," she said, voice low but urgent. "We have names. We have timestamps. If you've got records too, then this is bigger than we thought." Latrice leaned against the wall, watching the local news rerun Maya's segment for the third time. The anchor's tone had shifted from skepticism to outrage. A third grader flagged as a behavioral threat because she cried after lunch. Parents are demanding answers from Echo Kid and the State Department of Education. Jenna opened her laptop. Emails flooded in. Among them was a subject line that made her freeze. "We need to talk before they find out I spoke." It was from an address she didn't recognize, but the signature read, "Martin Kellogg." Her stomach twisted. She opened it. The message was short. "I never meant for this to happen. I didn't know what they'd do with the data. Meet me. Tonight. Alone. Newark. 11:30 p.m. Parking lot behind the old community center. I'll bring everything." Camille frowned when Jenna showed her. "It's a trap." Maybe," Jenna replied. "But what if it's not?" Lionel was the only one who didn't immediately object. "Let me make a few calls. If he's serious, we'll be there. With backup. Quiet backup." That night, the lot behind the community center was lit only by the orange spill of a single flickering street lamp. The building itself had long been abandoned, windows boarded, graffiti flaking from the walls. Jenna arrived with Camille and Lionel parked 1 block away, watching from an unmarked car with tinted windows. Rufus sat in the back, phone in hand, eyes sharp. Kellogg emerged from the shadows, wearing a tan coat and wire-framed glasses. His face was pale, his movements twitchy. "You came alone?" he asked, eyes scanning the darkness. Jenna didn't answer. She just folded her arms. "Talk." He handed her a flash drive and a sealed envelope. "It started as a research tool, predictive modeling for early support, that's all. But then the department got involved. Then contractors. They began pushing outcomes, excluding variables. You understand what I'm saying? They designed the model to flag black and brown kids. Quietly, indirectly." Jenna's hands clenched around the envelope. "And you just watched?" "I tried to pull out," Kellogg muttered. "But I'd signed too many NDAs. My name's all over it. I couldn't stop it, only delay the rollout. That's why they're moving fast now, because the window's closing. Then help us break it wide open." Kellogg nodded. "Inside that envelope is a signed internal directive. It's proof the state knew. Proof they approved the funding." Suddenly, a car door slammed in the distance. Kellogg jumped. "They're watching me," he hissed. "I have to go." Before Jenna could ask anything else, he disappeared into the darkness. 2 days later, the courtroom was packed. Lionel had moved fast, filing for a federal injunction backed by the flash drive's contents and the directive inside the envelope. Camille compiled a 78-page brief linking the algorithms designed to race-based discrimination. Rufus coordinated security and press. And Maya, quiet but steady, sat with her drawing in her lap. When the judge, a sharp-eyed black woman named Evelyn Granger, took her seat, the room hushed. Camille delivered the argument. Her voice was clear, her cadence steady. "We are not here to speculate intent. We are here to prove impact. The evidence shows targeted harm under the guise of progress, and it shows a failure systemic and sustained by institutions entrusted with children's futures. Judge Granger scanned the courtroom. Where is the child at the center of this? Maya stood up. For a second, the room seemed to hold its breath. She walked slowly to the front, her drawing pressed gently between her hands. Lionel gave her a nod, and she turned toward the judge. "My name is Maya Williams," she said. "I used to think school was safe, but then they said I was too quiet, too curious, too different, and then I wasn't picked for anything." Judge Granger leaned forward. "And why do you think that happened?" "Because someone told a computer who I was before I got to show them myself." The judge exhaled slowly. "Thank you, Maya." The ruling came 3 days later. A temporary freeze on all Echo Kid-related deployments statewide, a summons for executive testimony, and most importantly, a court order to release anonymized algorithm data to the public for review. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. Parents, teachers, and reporters stood in the chill afternoon air, waiting. Jenna walked out with Maya beside her. Cameras flashed. Someone shouted, "What do you say to the people who called this a hoax?" Jenna didn't raise her voice. She just looked into the camera. Justice isn't loud at first, but when it finally speaks, it leaves no doubt. Maya tugged gently at her coat. "Can I say something too?" Jenna stepped back. Maya turned to the crowd. "I'm not scared anymore, because now, people see me, and I hope they see the others too." There was a pause, then applause. It wasn't thunderous, not yet, but it was real, and for the first time, it was loud enough to reach the walls that had tried so hard to stay silent. The days that followed the injunction were a whirlwind of emails, news coverage, and cautious celebration. Jenna hardly slept, and Camille was buried in redrafting legal arguments for what was sure to be a drawn-out battle. Yet amid the chaos, something changed. People were finally listening. One gray Thursday morning, just as the sky began to turn silver before sunrise, Maya sat at the kitchen table of their small apartment, with a worn spiral notebook open in front of her. She wasn't drawing this time. She was writing. Latrice leaned in the doorway, arms folded, watching her with a quiet intensity. "You working on another story, baby?" Maya nodded slowly. "It's a letter." "To who?" "To my dad. But I think I'm going to give it to Mr. Ellison instead." Latrice's breath caught. She didn't say anything for a long moment, then simply whispered, "You take your time." Later that afternoon, while Camille and Jenna met with a documentary team interested in covering the case, Maya walked into the bakery alone. She wore a soft lavender sweater, her curls pulled back into a neat ponytail. The smell of warm sourdough and sweet apple cinnamon filled the air. Grant Ellison was behind the counter, sleeves rolled up, his hands dusted with flour. When he saw Maya, he immediately wiped his palms on a towel and smiled. "Hey there, sweetheart. What can I get you today?" Maya stepped forward and didn't order anything. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded envelope with her name written carefully on the front. "This is for you." Grant looked puzzled, but he took the letter, eyes meeting hers. "Should I open it now?" She nodded. He unfolded the paper slowly. His fingers trembled slightly, though he tried to hide it. As he began to read, the noise of the kitchen faded away. Maya's handwriting was careful and uneven in spots, but the words were unmistakably hers. "Dear Mr. Ellison, I know I don't have a dad, and that's okay. Some kids don't. But I think if I could have picked one, I would have wanted him to be like you. Not because you bought me muffins or gave me juice, but because you listened when no one else did. You didn't ask me to be smaller or quieter. You saw me. So, I want you to know, even if nobody else says it, you're already somebody's hero. You're mine. Love, Maya." By the time he finished, Grant's eyes were glistening. He didn't try to blink the tears away. He just knelt down in front of her and whispered, "Thank you. I'll keep this forever." She threw her arms around his neck. It was the kind of hug that said everything words couldn't. That night, Jenna, Camille, and Lionel sat around the small dinner table at Latrice's apartment. A chicken casserole steamed in the center, and Lionel passed around bowls of fresh corn salad. Rufus, surprisingly handy in the kitchen, had made sweet potato pie. It felt for the first time in weeks like family. They laughed about Lionel's terrible parking, teased Rufus for being too quiet around Maya, and exchanged old stories. Latrice shared tales of her childhood in Mississippi of porch swings and jazz records and sweet tea so strong it made your teeth hurt. When Maya padded out in her pajamas, everyone quieted. She climbed onto Jenna's lap and rested her head on her shoulder. "I like this," she murmured. "All of us together." Camille smiled, her eyes soft. "Me too, kiddo." There was a long pause. Then Jenna said, "I've been thinking, maybe we don't just fight this in court. Maybe we take it to Congress. Make some noise." Lionel raised an eyebrow. "You ready for that kind of storm?" Jenna looked at Maya. "She deserves it." They all nodded. 2 months later, Grant stood behind a podium in Washington, D.C., flanked by Camille and Jenna. Before them sat a bipartisan committee on educational technology oversight. The room was tense but respectful. Maya wasn't in the room, but her letter had been entered into the congressional record. Grant cleared his throat. "I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a policymaker. I run a bakery. But what happened to Maya, and to so many other children, happened on my watch too, because I wasn't paying attention, because I didn't know. But now I do. And if this country still means what I hope it does, then we don't let algorithms decide a child's future before their teacher even meets them." As behind him, the screens displayed anonymized data patterns of exclusion, disproportionate suspensions, predictive flags based on zip codes and behavior descriptors as vague as too quiet or frequently daydreams. Camille stepped up next. "Justice," she said, "isn't just about courtrooms. It's about course correction. And we're overdue." There was silence afterward. A thoughtful, unsettled silence. The kind that meant something had shifted. Back home, Maya and Latrice watched the broadcast on a second-hand television. Maya was curled up under a blanket, her favorite teddy bear nestled under her chin. When Grant's voice came through the speakers, she smiled. "He's not scared anymore," she whispered. "No, baby," Latrice said, brushing a curl from her forehead. "None of us are." Weeks passed. Laws changed. Schools rewrote contracts. The algorithm was dismantled in its current form, and a national task force was created to prevent bias in educational software. But for Maya, the biggest change was quieter. At school, her name no longer made teachers pause. Her test scores weren't flagged. Her questions weren't dismissed. She was simply Maya, a girl who liked space, who doodled stars, who once asked for a father and found something even more powerful: an army of people who stood up for her voice. And one evening, as the sky turned gold and pink outside her window, she opened her notebook and began writing a new story. This time, it wasn't about being unseen. It was about being heard. 3 months after the congressional hearing, life in the Williams household had grown steady, almost calm. Maya was thriving in school, now enrolled in an enrichment program that actually let her explore space science, not just dream about it. Latrice had finally accepted a full-time role as an administrator for the neighborhood senior center, and Jenna had returned to private practice, though she kept one photo of Maya on her desk to remind her why she fought. But peace, for people like them, was rarely permanent. It started with a letter, a white envelope, addressed to the legal guardians of Maya Williams, arrived without a return address. The handwriting was neat, almost too neat. Camille opened it at the dining table that afternoon while Maya napped on the couch, a copy of Hidden Figures slipping from her lap. Camille's eyes scanned the paper. Her expression hardened. "What is it?" Latrice asked, drying her hands with a dish towel. Camille passed her the letter. "Someone's filing a petition for legal custody of Maya, and it's not a stranger." Latrice read silently, her lips tightening. Then she whispered one word: Pearl. Pearl Holloway, Maya's birth mother, a name spoken only once since the night Maya arrived on Latrice's doorstep 6 years ago. She had vanished after leaving Maya at a shelter, leaving nothing behind but a tattered blanket and an intake form with barely legible answers. No one had heard from her since. Until now. The letter stated that Pearl had stabilized her life, was gainfully employed, and wanted reunification with her daughter. It was signed by an attorney from a firm that specialized in family law cases involving reunification, paid for curiously by an anonymous donor. Camille's mind immediately went to the worst-case scenario. "Someone's backing her," she muttered. "This isn't a sudden motherly awakening. This is about leverage." Jenna arrived an hour later with a printed dossier. "You were right," she said to Camille. The lawyer representing Pearl also handled cases for biotech contractors, including Ardent's former partners. "Someone's trying to drag Maya into a long game, and they're doing it through custody." "But she left Maya," Latrice whispered. "She didn't just fall on hard times, she disappeared. Who does that and gets to come back?" Jenna's tone was low. "People with power behind them. People who want to control the narrative. They didn't tell Maya right away. Not until they understood what the court hearing would involve. But children sense when something's shifted, even if the grown-ups are quiet." That Sunday, Maya pushed her scrambled eggs around her plate, barely eating. Finally, she asked, "Am I in trouble?" "No, baby," Latrice said, reaching for her hand. "Then why is everyone whispering?" Camilla kelt beside her. "Do you remember your birth mom, Pearl?" Maya hesitated, her brows drawing together. "Only a little. Her hair smelled like cinnamon. She used to hum when she cleaned." "Well," Camille said gently, "she's asked to see you again. She's asked to come back." Maya was silent for a long time. Then she looked up. "But why now?" No one had a good answer. The first family court meeting was closed to the public. Just the judge, both legal teams, and Pearl, who wore a conservative dress and a string of pearls as if the symbolism might help her case. Her eyes were bloodshot but dry. She didn't look at Latrice. She looked at Maya only once. The judge, a white-haired man named Merrick, asked the questions with clinical precision. "Miss Holloway, have you maintained contact with your child during your absence?" "No," Pearl admitted, her voice measured. "But I've been working to be someone she could be proud of." Camille didn't argue against that. Instead, she offered documentation reports from Maya's teachers, counselors, medical professionals, all painting the picture of a stable, thriving child whose trauma had finally begun to settle. Then she added one final piece: Maya's letter to Mr. Ellison. "It may not be legal testimony," Camille said, "but it's the purest measure of where Maya finds safety, love, and identity." Pearl's attorney objected, but the judge overruled him. The letter stayed in the record. Outside the courtroom, Maya sat on a bench with Jenna while the others met with the judge in chambers. She clutched her favorite book still, Hidden Figures, but didn't open it. "Do I have to live with her?" she asked quietly. "No one's going to make you do anything you don't want," Jenna said, her voice soft but firm. "The judge will listen to what's best for you." "But what if she's better now?" Maya asked. "What if she really wants me back?" "Yenna paust. Then that's something we'll talk about together. But being better doesn't mean you weren't hurt. And being your parent doesn't mean she automatically gets your heart again. You get to decide who earns that." Maya nodded slowly. Then, almost imperceptibly, she leaned into Jenna's side and whispered, "I already decided." Later that week, a surprise development arrived. Grant Ellison received a subpoena. He showed up in court in his usual soft-washed flannel and black slacks, entirely out of place among the suits but carrying a presence no one could deny. "I'm not here as her guardian," he told the court, "but I am here because Maya trusted me, and because I saw with my own eyes what this family has built around her." He paused, then added, "If Pearl wants to rebuild a relationship with Maya, that's fine, but it cannot come at the cost of uprooting her world. She's not a pawn, she's a person, and she knows where she belongs." The judge adjourned that day without a ruling, but as the gavel fell, Camille leaned toward Pearl's attorney and said evenly, "We'll settle this quietly, or we'll take it to the media, and you know what that means for your donors." The warning landed like a crack of thunder. Outside, in the fading sun, Maya stood at the courthouse steps holding Latrice's hand. "Do I have to see her again?" she asked. Latrice looked down. "Only if you want to, baby, and not until you're ready." Maya was quiet for a beat. Then she nodded. "Maybe one day, but not today." She turned toward the parking lot where Jenna waited with the car running. As they walked, Camille whispered, "We're not done fighting." Latrice nodded. "Good, because they're not done coming." The morning after the court hearing, Camille sat alone in the kitchen, the rising steam from her coffee curling in the cold air. The silence of the house so rare wasn't peaceful today. It was dense. Latrice had taken Maya to school early, hoping to keep their routine as normal as possible, but Camille knew normal was an illusion now. Pearl's reappearance had stirred something larger than custody, It had awakened ghosts. Her phone vibrated softly against the table. A message from Grant. "You should come by the gallery. There's something you need to see." The art gallery was quiet, as usual. Grant preferred it that way, appointments only. Soft jazz in the background, low lighting that made each piece feel like a secret. Camille stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Grant stood at the far end, holding a familiar frame in his hands. "I took it down this morning," he said, nodding toward the wall. Something felt off. He turned the frame around. Taped to the back was a sealed manila folder. Camille's eyes narrowed. "I didn't put that there," he added. "I swear." Ugh. Camille peeled the tape back and opened the folder carefully. Inside was a stack of typed documents, faded slightly at the edges, and a flash drive clipped to the top. The header on the first page read, "Ardent Internal Security File, Project Northbeam." She looked up, her voice low. "Where did this come from?" Grant shook his head. "That painting was part of the lot I bought 2 months ago." The same time Pearl started sniffing around. Camille's pulse quickened. "So someone's been planting evidence right under our noses." "Or protecting it," Grant said softly. They sat in the gallery office and plugged in the drive. A series of files appeared: lab logs, payment receipts, and transcripts. Camille clicked through, heart pounding. The deeper she went, the clearer it became. Project Northbeam wasn't just a research initiative. It was a controlled experiment. And Maya's sister, Amari, had been part of it. In one document, a research assistant detailed a child subject who showed rapid cognitive response to chemical sequences more than triple the control group. That child's code? NB17A. Matched perfectly to Amari's known file tag from the Foundation's leaked archives. Camille leaned back, eyes burning. They didn't just monitor her, they tested on her. That evening, Camille called Jenna and Latrice into the study. The folder lay on the table between them. "This is it," Camille said. "The leverage they've been using." Pearl didn't just abandon Maya. She signed away custody under pressure because they threatened to expose what happened to Amari. Jenna scanned the pages, each one more disturbing than the last. "This is beyond civil court. This is federal. If this goes public," Latrice cut in, "then Maya becomes a target, again." Camille nodded. "Which is why we need to control the release, not react to it." Jenna folded her arms. "Do you trust Grant?" Camille hesitated. Then, "Yes, I believe he didn't know. But someone used his gallery to drop this in our hands. Someone on the inside." Latrice's voice was steady. "Then we need to find them." Later that night, Camille found Maya sitting on the back porch. Her hoodie zipped up to her chin despite the spring air. She held a flashlight in one hand and was sketching constellations in a notebook. "Couldn't sleep?" Camille asked. Maya shrugged. "Had a dream. About Amari." Camille sat beside her, silent. She was standing in a room full of white light, like the ones in hospitals. She had her braids in, the purple ones I always wanted, and she said something. What did she say? She said, "Don't let them write our story. Write your own." Camille felt her chest tighten. "You know, I think that's exactly what she'd say." Maya looked up. "Is that folder about her?" Camille blinked. "What makes you ask that?" "I saw it on your desk, and I saw your face when you read it." "Oh." Camille reached for Maya's hand. "Yes, it is. And I promise, we're going to make sure she's remembered the right way." Maya squeezed her hand. "Then I want to help." "You already are." The next morning, Jenna arranged a secure meeting with an old contact, Avi Stern, a retired NSA investigator turned whistleblower advisor. They met in a small diner off Route 9, out of town and off the radar. Avi scanned the documents and nodded slowly. "If what's here is authentic, you're sitting on a scandal that could collapse more than one company, maybe even parts of the DoD. Camille leaned forward. "We're not looking to go nuclear. We want control, protection for Maya, and justice for Amari." Avi nodded. "Then we need to verify chain of custody, match the data, build a quiet case, brick by brick." He pulled out a burner phone and scribbled a number on a napkin. "Contact this guy, ex-CDC data forensic analyst. He'll know if this is real. But once you light the fuse, there's no going back." Camille pocketed the napkin. "We already lit it the moment Pearl walked back in." Back at home, Latrice found Maya curled up in the reading nook with her sketchbook. On the page was a drawing of two girls holding hands under the night sky. One had long braids. The other held a flashlight. Above them, written in neat cursive, were the words, "We don't run from shadows. We carry the light." Latrice nelpeside her. "You're not afraid, are you?" Maya looked up. "I'm not the one who should be." And with that, a shift occurred. Not just in their home, but in the balance of power. For the first time, they weren't just reacting, they were preparing, because someone had tried to bury the past. But Maya Williamson, the women who loved her, were ready to dig it back up. The old storage facility stood like a forgotten relic on the outskirts of town, tucked between rusted train tracks and a shuttered tire shop. Its corrugated walls were faded with years of grime, and a sagging chain-link fence barely guarded the entrance. At a glance, no one would imagine it once belonged to Ardent's research division. Camille parked the car in the shadows of an elm tree. In the passenger seat, Jenna zipped her windbreaker up to her chin. "You sure about this?" Camille didn't answer right away. Her eyes remained fixed on the building. "The address was in the folder. If the records say this is where Amari was brought, we check it. We don't guess anymore." Jenna nodded and tucked her phone into her boot. "Then let's move." Inside, the air was thick with the smell of mold and old metal. The flashlight beams cut through dust like ribbons of smoke. Rows of metal shelves held scattered debris-old lab boxes, cracked monitors, a child's plastic chair turned upside down. Camille paused beside a locked file cabinet. The combination was taped crudely to the side like someone wanted it to be found. She turned the dial, and the door creaked open with a groan. Jenna peered over her shoulder. "Anything?" Camille pulled out a thin binder labeled NB Trials, Terminated Subjects. She opened it, hands trembling. There it was. Subject, NB-17. A name, Amari Williams. A photo paperclipped to the top showed a girl with long braids and wary eyes. Next to it, medical stats, test summaries, behavior logs. "She was here," Camille whispered. Jenna took a shaky breath. "And someone left this for us to find." Camille flipped through until she found a handwritten note tucked at the back. "They stopped the trials, but not the surveillance. Check the name. T. Holloway. That's where it starts." Camille felt her blood run cold. She'd seen that name once before on a memo Grant had framed in the gallery's backroom, from the early Ardent Foundation days. T. Holloway had been listed as executive oversight. Later that night, back at Camille's house, the women spread the binder's contents across the dining table. Latrice studied the note carefully. T. Holloway. That's not just a name, that's a gatekeeper. "Then we go to the gate," Jenna said. Camille stared at the name, lips tightening. "We won't knock. We're going to blow it off the hinges." 2 days later, Camille arranged to meet with Grant in a quiet coffee shop outside the city. It was the kind of place with low ceilings, warm lighting, and shelves of secondhand books. She sat at a corner booth as Grant slid in across from her, a manila envelope in hand. "You were right," he said, setting it down. "I pulled every transaction linked to that art lot." Holloway's name popped on 2 pieces both purchased under shell companies. One of them was the painting with the folder. Camille opened the envelope and scanned the documents. "Why funnel it through art?" "Art doesn't leave digital fingerprints," Grant said. "It's an old laundering trick, and someone wanted to hide something valuable in plain sight." Camille looked up. "What else do you know about Holloway?" Grant leaned back, his face tense. "He disappeared from public view 8 years ago. Rumors said he went private sector security consulting, international contracts. But I found something else." He slid his phone across the table. On the screen was a photo of a man in his 60s, dressed in a military-grade parka, stepping out of a black SUV. The image was recent, time-stamped from just a week ago outside a secure building in Arlington. Camille recognized the building. Federal property. "He's still protected," she whispered. "And dangerous," Grant added. "If you go after him, you won't be the only one watching." Camille pocketed the photo. "Then it's time we make sure we're seen." That evening, Maya came home from school with a folded piece of construction paper. She handed it to Camille silently. On the front, in big letters, it said, "My sister is a star." Inside was a hand-drawn picture of Amari with wings and a glowing heart. Next to her stood Maya, holding a small lantern. Underneath, a note. "I miss you even if I never met you. I'll never forget you. Your light is in me." Camille felt a lump rise in her throat. She knelt and pulled Maya into her arms. "You're the bravest little girl I've ever known," she said. Maya leaned against her. "We're not scared of bad people, right?" Camille kissed her forehead. "Not even a little." Late that night, Jenna's contact Avi called back. "I found Holloway's current alias," he said. "He goes by Thomas Ellis now. Works out of a restricted wing at a biotech think tank. But here's the kicker, he still holds a security clearance." Kemi's voice dropped. "So he's still connected." "More than connected," Avi replied. "He's still pulling strings. And if he finds out you're poking around, you'll need more than evidence. You'll need protection." Camille looked out the window, where Maya's flashlight sketch still hung on the fridge. "We're not backing down," she said. There was a pause on the line. "Then let me make some calls." As she hung up, Camille turned to Jenna and Latrice. "Tomorrow," she said, "we go to Arlington. Not just to confront a man, but to expose a machine." The morning air in Arlington carried a crispness that sliced through Camille's nerves like a scalpel. As the black rental SUV glided past the Capitol's distant dome, she sat between Jenna and Latrice in the back seat, reviewing their plan one more time. Jenna had secured visitor credentials through a contact who owed her more than one favor. The name on Camille's badge read, Dr. Helena Ray, a fabricated identity tied to a think tank, supposedly working on environmental health audits. Latrice carried a briefcase filled with decoy documents, technical jargon layered over real findings about Arden's early trial subjects, just enough to bait interest without setting off alarms. "This only works if we walk in like we belong there," Jenna said as she applied a final touch of mascara in the sun visor mirror. "Confidence is our armor." "Armor's no good if we walk into a minefield," Latrice murmured. She wasn't wrong. The biotech compound looked more like a private college campus than a security-linked think tank. Brushed aluminum signage, minimalist glass facades, and manicured greenery framed the wide stone path leading up to the main building. Inside, soft jazz filtered through the lobby air, making the tension feel all the more surreal. A receptionist in a sleek navy uniform greeted them with a smile. "Appointment with Director Ellis?" "Yes," Camille said smoothly, her voice steady. "Helena Ray, Environmental Review Division." The woman checked her tablet, then nodded. "You'll be in conference room B, 3rd floor. Security will escort you." As they rode the elevator up, Camille glanced at the mirrored walls. Her reflection looked calm, but she could feel every muscle vibrating with suppressed fury. They stepped into a stark, glass-walled conference room with an expansive view of Arlington's skyline. A long, polished table dominated the space. And then he entered. Thomas Ellis wore a charcoal suit that fit like armor and moved with the quiet authority of a man who knew he was untouchable. His silver hair was cut military short, his expression unreadable. "You must be Dr. Ray," he said, offering a tight handshake. Camille took it. "And you must be Director Ellis." They sat. Jenna slid the briefcase onto the table and clicked it open. "We're conducting a cross-institutional audit on legacy health trials, specifically looking into data retention protocols. Your name came up on a few oversight reports." Holloway didn't flinch. "Old ghosts," he said with a dry smile. "I've supervised a few rough programs in my time, but all with full legal clearance, of course." Latrice laid a printout on the table, Amari's record, redacted just enough to appear clinical. "This subject file wasn't stored according to national retention guidelines. You know what that implies." Holloway glanced at it, then leaned back, folding his hands. "You think you're the first to come digging? You're about to learn what happens to shovels when they go too deep." Camille's jaw clenched. "You think burying kids in files and shell corporations keeps your conscience clean?" She was 10 years old. Her name was Amari Williams. At the mention of the name, something flickered in Holloway's eyes, something old and unburied. "I remember," he said. "She had unusual neural readings. We weren't testing drugs. We were tracking patterns, trying to predict the next generation of cognition. And yes, it was sanctioned. National defense interests." "She was a child," Camille snapped. "She was a statistic," Holloway replied coldly. "One that ended the moment the project was deemed too volatile. I didn't kill her. Bureaucracy did." Latrice stood. "You orchestrated that bureaucracy. You made the deals. You moved the money. But what you didn't do was erase every trail." Camille slid a flash drive across the table. This contains transaction records, recovered communications, and 3 testimonies from your ex-staff who watched those trials spiral out of control. If you won't talk to us, the press will." Holloway didn't touch the drive. He looked at her for a long moment, then stood and walked to the window. "If you take this public, you won't win. You'll spark outrage, sure. But the machine behind this? It eats outrage for breakfast." Jenna rose, voice level. "We're not here to win. We're here to finish what she started." He turned slowly. "You're referring to Camille's sister?" Camille's breath caught. "I know who you are," he said. "Your sister's death was flagged in our internal review. It was never supposed to happen like that. She wasn't part of the continuation group." Camille took a step forward. "And yet she's buried in an unmarked grave. Tell me why." Holloway looked at her then, not with smugness, but something wearier. "Because she found out what I just confirmed for you, and she refused to stop asking questions." For a beat, silence filled the room. Latrice moved first. "We're done here." They left the flash drive on the table and walked out, past the silent receptionist and through the glass doors into the cold air. Outside, the wind hit them like a baptism. "What now?" Jenna asked. Camille stared at the sun climbing above the city. "Now we give the world a name to remember." That night, Camille uploaded the file Severy document, every interview, every thread they had unraveled, and sent them to 5 investigative journalists, a national legal watchdog group, and 1 podcast network known for taking down corrupt corporations. She didn't wait for permission. She waited for the storm. By dawn, the storm Camille had predicted began to roar. It started with a Ripley's anonymous post on a whistleblower forum. Within hours, it spread across Reddit threads, TikTok reels narrated by 20-somethings with steely voices, and Twitter posts under the hashtag number Justice for Amari. The documents Camille had released were dissected and reassembled by amateur sleuths and investigative veterans alike. Journalists from The Atlantic, ProPublica, and even CNN reached out with follow-up questions. Camille didn't answer right away. She was already on the move. She stood in her sister's old neighborhood in southeast D.C., near the playground where Amari used to sing rhymes to the rhythm of jump ropes. The metal slide was rusted now, but it still carried the echoes. A few kids played tag in the corner, and for a moment Camille watched them in silence. Then she turned to the mural behind Hearth, one she had painted herself, Amari's bright eyes staring out beneath a swirl of lavender and gold. Latrice stepped up beside her. CNN just released a piece calling it the most damning biotech leak in the past decade. Camille gave a tired nod. "That's one step, but it's not justice. Not yet." Latrice opened a paper folder she'd been carrying. "You should see this. It's a signed affidavit from Dr. Gideon Yates, Holloway's old deputy. He's confirming everything: names, lab protocols, even mentions of the neurological enhancement trials. He's scared, but he's ready to talk under oath." Camille's hand trembled slightly as she took the pages. "It's enough to open a federal inquiry." Jenna joined them, breathless. "We've got a problem." "What now?" Camille asked, bracing herself. "Holloway resigned this morning. Officially, it's due to health complications. Unofficially, he's lawyering up. And worse, there's a counter-narrative forming." "What kind?" "That you're unstable. That your sister's death drove you over the edge and you're launching a vendetta. Some ex-employee went on Fox News this morning calling you a grief-ridden conspiracy theorist with a vendetta against progress." Camille let out a bitter laugh. Classic. But it wasn't funny. In the media game, perception was as lethal as facts. The system wouldn't collapse on truth alone. It had to feel personal to people watching at home. "I need to go public," Camille said quietly. "Not just through anonymous tips or records. I need to show them my face, my voice. Let them hear what this cost." Latrice frowned. "Are you sure?" Camille turned toward the mural again. "She died alone. She doesn't deserve to stay a file name, and neither do the others." Later that afternoon, Camille sat in a folding chair beneath studio lights in a modest podcast studio in Baltimore. Across from her sat Mia Chen, host of the nationally syndicated series Echoes Unheard. The room was quiet except for the hum of the condenser mics and a faint ticking clock on the wall. Mia leaned forward. "We're rolling. Whenever you're ready." Camille swallowed and began. "My name is Camille Williams. I'm a community nurse, a sister, and someone who refused to stop asking why my little sister never came home. She told the story not as a victim, but as a witness, calm, deliberate, her voice never trembling even when she spoke of Amari's bruised hands, her quiet genius, and the empty casket funeral. She walked listeners through the discovery of the files, the hospital irregularities, the hidden trial data. She spoke of Gideon Yates's affidavit and the coded language used to obscure non-consensual testing. Finally, she paused. Her next words came softer. I used to believe justice looked like courtrooms and jail time, but justice is remembering. Justice is naming names when others won't, and justice, in this case, looks like a child's story being louder than the institution that tried to erase her. By the time the episode aired, it had already been downloaded 2.4 million times. The backlash was swift. Camille's workplace was inundated with calls, some supportive, others vile. Latrice's name was leaked on fringe sites. Jenna received threats at her apartment. But something else happened too. Former employees at Ardent, many long retired, began stepping forward. A nurse from the early trials confirmed the same lab codes Camille had mentioned. A lab tech admitted to shredding pages he was told to destroy. A mid-level administrator anonymously forwarded more emails, including one with Holloway's direct signature authorizing early trials on minors. Then came the most unexpected call of all. An assistant from Senator Diane Franklin's office left a voicemail. The senator wishes to meet Miss Camille Williams privately. She has concerns about Ardent's past funding structure. Camille stood in her kitchen with the phone still in her hand, a mug of untouched chamomile tea cooling on the counter. She looked up at Latrice, who had been watching from the hallway. Did we just break through? Latrice shrugged, her eyes cautious. Maybe. Or maybe they want to contain the fallout. Camille knew it didn't matter. Either way, the door had opened and she intended to walk through. That night, she stood at her window, watching rain tap lightly against the glass. The streetlights below flickered through puddles, and across the road, a young girl in a yellow hoodie ran laughing toward her mother. Camille pressed a hand to the window pane. Amari, she whispered, they hear you now. And in that silence, as thunder rolled in the distance, Camille didn't feel powerless. She felt ready. The hearing room was colder than it needed to be. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the walls bore the same neutral beige that had dulled thousands of testimonies before Camille's. She stood behind the microphone, her hands resting lightly on the wooden podium. The plaque in front of her read, Public Oversight Committee, Special Session on Biomedical Ethics. Cameras lined the back wall. Journalists scribbled notes. Senator Diane Franklin sat in the center, flanked by aides and co-chairs, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. Camille took a breath. The hum in the room quieted. I didn't come here as a politician, or a lawyer, or someone seeking revenge, she began, her voice steady, every syllable deliberate. I came here as a sister, as someone who loved a little girl named Amari Williams. She was 10 years old when she was selected for what Ardent Biotech called a routine trial. But it wasn't routine, it wasn't safe, and it wasn't ethical. She paused, scanning the room, letting her silence settle heavy in the air. They injected her with compounds that weren't fully tested. She experienced seizures, hallucinations, and eventually organ failure. We were told it was a rare virus, that it was our fault for waiting too long. But I've seen the records, I've seen the signatures, the initials beside her trial ID. The experiment was approved, sanctioned by powerful men who now sit behind corporate walls, protected by layers of deniability. Senator Franklin leaned forward. Miss Williams, are you asserting that Ardent Biotech knowingly tested unapproved neurological treatments on minors without informed consent? Camille didn't flinch. Yes, and I have the documents to prove it, signed by Dr. Holloway himself, with oversight from private investors tied to federal grants. A murmur rippled through the audience. From the first row, Latrice nodded slowly, her fingers intertwined so tightly her knuckles whitened. Beside her, Jenna sat with her laptop open, recording every reaction, every question, every response. People say justice is blind, Camille continued. But I don't think that's true. I think she's just tired. Tired of being told to wait, to be polite, to have faith that the system will self-correct. But faith doesn't bring children back. Faith doesn't undo trauma. and faith doesn't strip corporations of billion-dollar protections. She reached into her bag and pulled out a laminated photograph of Amari, sitting in her sunflower dress, eyes wide and smile uneven. She placed it gently on the podium. She was a child, and she was brilliant. She made up songs about constellations. She once stayed up all night trying to figure out why our dog barked at airplanes. She mattered, and she deserves better than to be another redacted footnote in a federal archive. By the time Camille stepped down from the stand, the room was silent, not from indifference but respect. The next day, headlines shifted. Ardent biotech, under federal scrutiny after whistleblower testimony. Senate launches ethics investigation into unapproved pediatric trials. Justice for Amari, the story that broke the silence. But real justice, Camille knew, wouldn't come in a headline. It came in pieces. It came when Latrice's community center received a surge in donations to fund youth science programs in Amari's name. When Senator Franklin introduced the Amari Williams Biomedical Ethics Act to tighten clinical trial regulations for minors. When Gideon Yates testified, trembling but honest. When families across the country wrote Camille, saying they too had lost children to vague experimental programs and were now ready to speak out. It came slowly, but it came. 1 month later, Camille stood outside a small community garden built beside the school Amari used to attend. A brass plaque on the gate read, "The Amari Hope Garden, where curiosity blooms forever." Kids ran through rows of wildflowers. Laughter echoed from the playground. Sunlight stretched long across the soil, golden and warm. She didn't wear black anymore. Not today. Latrice handed her a trowel, and together they planted a row of lavender. Maya ran between them, giggling, carrying a plastic watering can. Camille looked at the little girl and smiled. "How's the job at the library going?" Maya beamed. "I get to organize the storybooks, and they said I might help with the Saturday readings if I behave." Camille chuckled, brushing a lock of hair from Maya's forehead. "You'll do more than behave. You'll lead." That night, Camille sat on her porch with a blanket over her knees and a mug of warm cider in her hands. The sky above her stretched wide and star-strewn. She let herself breathe fully, deeply for the first time in years. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jenna. "We just passed 10 million downloads. The final episode aired tonight. Camille, people are listening." She set the phone aside. Then, slowly, she began to hum. It was a tune she hadn't dared to sing in years. The one Amari made up in the car on their last road trip, nonsense lyrics about moonlight, corn dogs, and galaxies. Camille closed her eyes and let the melody wrap around her like a memory that would never fade. Justice, she thought, wasn't loud. It was steady. It was patient. And sometimes, it sounded like a sister humming into the night, promising she'd never stop telling the truth.